Hey Akhilesh.
Hey.
It's the glyphic stand-up with a special with a special guest Arjun.
Yeah.
Hopefully people will show up soon. How are things, Arjun? Where are you? Bangalore or
Bangalore. Yeah. Going good. The weather here is amazing right now.
nice and cool?
Yeah. Cloudy, quite cloudy as well.
Okay. Hey Roman. Hey Saloni.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Hi
Hey,
everyone. Hi.
hey Prateek.
Hello everyone.
Hopefully the GramVaani team will show up in the next few minutes. Or in the next minute or so.
Yeah, I think
Rohan, are you from GramVaani? Sorry.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
The partnerships director at GramVaani.
Okay.
And I'll have Adi joining us soon. Our tech team members will be here. Even Rachit would join. Maybe just 1 or 2 minutes.
Cool. And Saloni, are you also from GramVaani?
No, I'm from Samagra.
Oh, okay.
But meanwhile, Lou, thank you very much for this session and thank you for your time. For everyone.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you for showing us all your work and the cool stuff you have been doing. Hey, while we are waiting, why don't we just do a quick round of introductions so that people will know who we are. So I'll just name like 4 people at a row, and then we can start. I'll just go from my screen. Abhishek, Arjun, Shamun, and Akhilesh.
Hey everyone, I'm Abhishek. I'm product manager at Glyphic. I had designed a Colored Cow software development company. Making it quick.
Yeah, 3 sentences or less. Arjun, Shamun, Akhilesh.
Yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Arjun. I'm one of the co-founders at Samanvay Research and Development Foundation, and I lead the Avni team there.
Hey, this is Mohammed Shamil. I'm a software developer at Colored and I lead the front-end.
Hey everyone, my name is Akhilesh Negi. I'm a software developer at Colored Cow and I've been part of a Glyphic backend team for past 1 year.
Saloni, Mohit, Pankaj, Prateek.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Saroni. I'm working as a product manager at Samagra Governance. I'm looking at unified communications interface along with Sunburst team.
Hi, I'm Mohit. I work in Karanka, and in Glyphic, I'm working as a support lead from last one year. Yeah.
Pankaj.
Okay, so hello everyone, I'm Pankaj. I work at Colored Cow. Currently, I'm taking care of the tech development at Glyphic.
Prateek, Chanel, Aman.
Yes. Hello, I'm Prateek. I'm product manager at Dost Education. We also have an IVR product for early childhood development. So I'm very excited for the talk by GramVaani.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Chanel, and I'm co-founder and product designer at Uloy Labs. And again, very interested in learning about the IVR system and everything because we are also moving towards that direction.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Aman. I work as a product engineer at Avanti Fellows, and I'm one of the chief initial builders of Plio. Super excited to be here.
Sebastian, Adi.
Yeah, hi everyone. Great to see you again from different corners. I'm Sebastian, co-founder and head of product of Arm Digital as an easy-to-use case management software.
And Adi, you can introduce yourself and you can take it over.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks Prabhu for organizing all this. I'm Adi. I'm one of the co-founders of GramVaani, and really excited and looking forward to talking to all of you. Sorry, I joined a bit late. We have some team members also. I have Rohan and I think Abhideep is here. They introduce themselves.
Yeah, Abhideep, can you introduce yourself? Rohan did, so.
Hi, I'm Abhideep. I'm also a member of the engineering team at GramVaani, and just excited to be here and share what we're doing and take any questions.
Great. So let me share my screen.
So Adi, I introduced myself before everyone joined. Great. So I'm Rohan. I'm leading partnerships at GramVaani. Thank you for your time today. Looking forward to this.
Cool. And I'll probably turn off my video just so that the audio comes across better. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So, yeah. So let me begin. So we started in 2009, and it's been a long journey. So really looking forward. The talk was a good occasion for us to try and bring a lot of stuff together that we wanted to talk about. With GramVaani, we've been working in this area called community media and essentially building technologies for community media. So let me begin with giving you a quick introduction about what this really is. Right. So community media starts with the perspective that external media like through newspapers or television, which is editorially controlled by other people, that is not able to represent the needs of the community very well. And this is why if the media is owned and controlled and governed by the community itself, then it will be able to meet their requirements very nicely. And some of the ways in which this is done is you may have heard of things like community radio, which is where a low-cost FM station is set up in an area, and it caters to the community from that particular area. So people from the neighborhood, they can come to the station, they can record their own content, and it gets consumed. It's broadcast over FM frequency modulation, and it gets consumed by the community in the same area. Then fellow travelers in this long journey, organizations like Video Volunteers, they pioneered the idea of community video. And again, the idea is similar, that they train youth from local communities to create short films. Could be on whatever, right? Local events that are happening, could be on corruption cases, or anything, right? Anything that the community feels important. And so this is sort of in the pre-smartphone era that they used to, and they still do actually, in remote communities, they still hold these kind of video screenings. So in the evenings, and these screenings are attended by like over 100 people from the area, where they screen these films, and then it's followed by discussions and deliberations by the community on meeting whatever issues they might be talking about. Similarly, one of the very first organizations to do this was Khabar Dehriya, who built up this whole idea of women journalists. So they trained women from the communities to become journalists, and they would write stories, and Khabar Dehriya would then put these up on panchayat walls and various other places so that it could be read by more people. And this is a very feminist stance that they took because it was the stories were written by women, and now they've also moved to the digital era where they create videos also. Again, it's all done by women journalists in the area, and they run these on YouTube and other distribution channels. So the way community media really leads to development, so here are some pathways, right? So one idea is that because the local community is producing its own content, it's in the local language, it has local references, so naturally people will be able to understand it much better. And therefore, whatever awareness increases you might expect, it's likely that with community media, it will be much faster, more accelerated than, let's say, somebody were to create content and broadcast it in different areas. So the whole idea of user-generated content being more contextual is one pathway that is fundamental over here. Similarly, as long as the community media is representative, which means that it's able to, different social groups from the community are represented, they're able to voice themselves, it leads to a lot of self-empowerment. Because you can imagine, right, that if a person from a marginalized caste or social group is talking about their problem, then they know that thousands of other people are able to listen to it. That's very empowering. It also becomes a way for improving local governance, because if you talk about issues you're facing with local government schemes, problems with getting your entitlements, or whatever other issues, right? So it's a media, it's really a platform that you have where you can talk about these issues. And because all of this is going on a public platform, it puts a lot of pressure on authorities, on different local power holders to change and to be more responsive to the needs of the local community. So it's really all about bottom-up empowerment. And lastly, once the community has its own media, they can talk about local culture, local entertainment, and all that really helps strengthen the community. Yeah. So by the way, just stop me whenever you want, and I'll be happy to take questions. Right? We can keep this informal, whichever way. Right? So please feel free. One of the first, our journey over this duration has been long, and I'll talk about how we've sort of shifted from just being a tech company to being more of a media and a development company. But the way we started is in 2009, we built what's called a radio automation system for community radio stations. A couple of years after that, we moved to using IVR to deliver similar services where users could talk about their issues and whatever content they wanted to share, and other people could consume. And then since then, we've been building a bunch of stuff on top of it. So as we got to doing larger projects, we felt the need to integrate the IVR data with program monitoring data. So we've been using ODK, and that helps us understand who's using the IVR, who's not using the IVR, because through ODK, we're able to capture a lot of that other user information. Then I'll also briefly talk about other new innovations in the machine learning and AI space that we've been working on, something on optical character recognition that we do for enumeration of the communities at a large scale, and which is very helpful as I'll explain, and then something more on speech automation. Yeah. With our journey really started over here with working with community radio station, and it's been a very fulfilling journey in the sense that we really built this whole system bottom up in a very user-centered manner. So we actually went and sat in community radio stations that were running at that time, and what you see over here is that when they wanted to record, if they wanted to put up a caller, right, somebody who calls the station, and they want to record this conversation and broadcast it on the community radio, then, people were using very rudimentary methods where basically they would put the phone on speaker and then record it on a USB recorder. Similarly, at that time, they were using Winamp. Not sure how many people are as old as me around here, but this used to be a popular media player at that time. And basically, we use it to listen to songs, but here an entire radio station was running. And this also sort of gives you a feel of what the radio station is like, right? So in some of these stations are very bare bones, like a 2-room setup, right? So here you have a control room sort of, and then behind this glass panel, there is a small studio. And it's often soundproofed. This particular station is using some other material, but very often stations put up egg trays on the walls and then very thick curtains, and that's like a very low-cost soundproofing mechanism that several stations have been using. Similarly, they didn't have much of content management capabilities, so these are some instructions that we saw the station managers they had put up on how to archive content. So it was all like very rudimentary. So what we did in this whole setup is that we installed a computer which was running GRINS. GRINS is our solution, which stands for Grameen Radio Internetworking System. And basically what this did was that we connected all sorts of audio which could be controlled through the software that we built on GRINS. So for example, the computer could connect to a GSM gateway, so that anybody could call into the station, and that the audio would then come into our setup. Similarly, we had a headphone which the radio jockey could use to preview what song was going to play next or what program was going to play next, and they could control the scheduling and right here whatever had to go on air, this was sent into a mixer. Similarly, whatever was coming on the mic could go into a mixer. We also brought in the mic feed so that it could be archived on the computer, and then all of this is mixed by the mixer and which eventually goes to a transmitter. So inside this computer, actually it was fairly complicated engineering that we ended up doing to make sure that audio latencies are low. And at that time, we were really looking at cost as one of the driving factors. So we were using a very low-cost single-board computer at that time, which would run all this. Now, of course, the machines are more powerful and all of this is sort of redundant. We can get very good audio performance, but at that time, we had to do a fair bit of low-level engineering to make sure that all of these audio flows did not add to latency and they could all work in parallel. So this is sort of what the user interface used to look like. The radio jockey basically had this interface. They had a headphone and a mic, and through this they could pick up a call and they could put the call live on air. Whatever they were speaking, that could be archived. We even had a conferencing facility so that if the station had two phone lines, then a person could call and they could call out, let's say, an expert on another phone line, and the two people could have a conversation where the person could ask questions, the expert could give an answer. All of that audio was broadcast live and it could be archived locally. And then we did a bunch of other stuff that the station could also, if they had a good internet connection, they could stream it out. They could look at SMSs, do polling, and all sorts of things, cool stuff. So this is still actually being used in many stations. We're not able to support it very actively, but this is an open source system and it's still much in use. Commercial equivalents, even now, are in the tens of thousands of dollars that can provide similar features. So while this was all great and a fantastic experience for all of us to actually build this ground up and then to continuously fine-tune the features and everything. But one of the business models that we wanted to build on top of it was that because each station is small in itself, a single station is not able to talk to, let's say, a Unilever to get an advertising contract. You would need a large network of stations. So our idea was that we could be that kind of an aggregator who could build a large network of stations that were running grids. We could do syndicated advertising that could be broadcast simultaneously on many stations. And that's where the inter-networking part in grids, that vision came in from. And then we could, of course, share the revenue with the stations, which would help them become operationally sustainable because they need to pay staff salaries and all sorts of things. But unfortunately, the whole policy setup in India didn't evolve very rapidly. Even now, there's just a handful of stations really that are broadcasting good stuff. So there were licensing issues that came up. The application for setting up a community radio, non-profits for them, it needs to move to like 6 different ministries and it takes an endless amount of time. And there's limited reach and stuff. So a couple of years later, basically in 2011, we pivoted and we said that, well, we need to have a different way which doesn't require this complicated licensing for organizations who want to set up similar community media kind of systems. And this is where we developed an IVR setup, which basically, it's philosophically pretty much the same. The way it works is that users can give a call and they in fact give a missed call. Our servers cut the call and call the people back. So this way it's free for the users. And over this, they can listen to content. So whatever audio messages, audio capsules we published, the people can listen to them. They can listen to the first one, press 1 to go to the next, skip to the next, press 1 to skip to the next, and so on. There are different channels that they can also navigate. And to bring in the two-way engagement, the users can also record their own content, right? So if they want to ask a question or they want to report some local news, they can basically record that message. And it comes to a moderation tool, yeah? And so this is sort of what the moderation interface looks like. So this is This is the web-based interface. The moderation team could be sitting anywhere, and through this interface, they are able to look at what content users have contributed. They can listen to it. They can reject it, accept it based on editorial policies that they follow. They can add titles, transcripts, annotations, all sorts of tags. We also have machine learning now integrated into this, where we automatically try to infer the gender of the caller. We also try to infer, we send the audio to a speech transcription, and then we try and infer things like the topic that the audio is about. So this can further help segregate, right? If different moderators, somebody is looking at health, somebody is looking at governance, it can help in that kind of a segregation. And then whatever content the moderators deem publishable, that content then goes back on the IVR, right? So people can call, they can listen to published content, or they can record their own content. Yeah. And then we do a lot of other things also. So whatever content people have recorded, right? If they have a question, and let's say, and we have an NGO partner who can provide answers, then we channel this question to the partners. We get the answer from them, and the answer can then it goes back to the caller, but it can also be played on the IVR so that other people can also listen to it. Yeah. So and this is not, right. So this is what essentially brings the equivalent of community radio to IVR, and then we have a bunch of other things, right? So this particular solution is what we call vForum, but we also have on IVR we also have a survey tool, which is like SurveyMonkey, that you can basically create your own custom questionnaire with like multiple choice questions or voice recordings. And now we also have, with speech integration, users can also speak in natural language, and then we will infer the entity from that transcription, which we then get through the speech transcription APIs. So this is very useful for data collection. Similarly, we have a helpline where somebody who calls, they can press a button and we can connect them to a call center, right? So it can be it's like a live conferencing system. And if there is no call center, then we can also, if there's a panel of volunteers who can respond. So that's also very useful, that somebody calls and we try and ping a set of volunteers who are available at that time. Whoever is available, we patch the call. And then they can have a live conversation and it also gets recorded. Then we have a case handler, which is useful for things like grievance redressal, where somebody calls and they are recording a grievance and they're assigned a case ID. And this grievances can then be assigned to a handler who can call and provide updates, and these updates can go back to the person. Yeah. So now the interesting thing is that the way our whole stack is designed is that all of these can also be integrated together. So you can, and we've done a whole bunch of like complex IVRs, which is essentially just a configuration for us, because all of these basic applications are ready. So, right, so we've done things like you can couple a large number of surveys together if you want to build it into something like an assessment engine on IVR. If you want to similarly couple together that a person is calling and they can listen to a whole bunch of information and instructions, and then if they want, they can also take a survey, right? So all of these components can be integrated together very seamlessly and to build fairly complex, very complex IVR structures. And this has been used. We've now been working with partners across many different verticals, and it's been used for things like behavior change campaigns, where people call and they can, they share their own stories. So over here, people would share stories about early marriage, about domestic violence and abuse, and they can draw inspiration from one another. They can draw solidarity from one another. And so these are, right, so it's very, just by being able to listen to voices of other people who have gone through similar struggles, who have emerged from it, who have dealt with it, that can be very inspiring. The way we do it do these campaigns is essentially, right, we have call to actions asking users to share their stories, and then we publish these stories back on the IVR. And it's all, we try to curate it so that it's organized. It's not just a random assortment, but it's curated, organized into different themes, and then updated every couple of days. So it keeps the content quality also useful. Similarly, some other fascinating projects, we've been working with physically disabled people who again use it as a support group, where they give suggestions to each other, right? What mobile phone should I use? So I'm a visually impaired person, and what's a good mobile phone model for us, and similar things. It's used by one very popular project done in partnership with Priya, is a question answering system for adolescents, young boys and girls. And they ask questions on relationships, on sexual matters, puberty, menstruation, and it's a very non-judgmental forum. So there's a expert gynecologist who helps answer these questions, and also it has a very rights-based stance with which she pulls out her answers, especially when she's responding to things like relationships and love matters and these kinds of things. Then it's used by women in self-help groups and also by their children, where one of the big areas is parents want to be involved in the education of their children. They're very concerned. They want the children to get good education, so things like exam tips and other activities. I know those education is here, so they would completely understand some of this. Similarly, we work with microfinance institutions who, again, one part is counseling of the borrowers who borrowed money, but also in terms of a grievance redressal system, so that in case there are issues which the MFI is not dealing with, so this is like an escalation system that goes to Sadhan, which is a self-regulating organization responsible for a network of microfinance institutions. We've also been working in the labor rights space. So in Tamil Nadu, women who work in garment factories, so there's a system for them, which they can call and they can record issues, sexual harassment or unfair dismissal, unpaid wages. These kinds of issues are recorded and they're taken up by the union, who then follows up on them. And similarly, on grievance redressal, we've been doing a bunch of things around that as well, recruiting volunteers who can then help people with their government schemes and stuff. Yeah. So the interesting bit, however, in all of this is that the projects that I described have sort of panned over all of these years. But none of them would really have been possible had we just stayed a tech company. Because it was actually part of the shift happened just randomly without planning. We were just curious. But then it grew into its own arm. And this is where we feel that we really transitioned from just being a tech company to being a media or even a development organization. So this is around 2013 is when we started working on the ground ourselves. So instead of providing a technology to partners, we said that, well, let's just start our own program. And we started this in Jharkhand in partnership with George Deyes and Deepika Khera on trying to see how people could call in and record grievances that they were facing with NREGA. And then we were working with a NREGA Sahayata Kendra in Jharkhand, who would then take up these grievances and work on addressing them. But basically, it was this moment that when we actually were on the ground ourselves, that we started really understanding what all technology needed over and above, just good technology to be successful. And I'll give some examples of that. So one of the things was we understood the relevance of offline processes. Right, so even IVR, right, it's straightforward, simple, just give a missed call, right? But even that, back then and even now is still very alien to people, that they're actually talking to a machine on the other side. So we actually built offline processes initially through the Narega Science Kendra team, but then later on now, of course, we're working in many other areas, and right, we work through volunteers. So we recruit volunteers from the local community, and the volunteers become our face in the community. So they talk to people, they demonstrate the system to them, they explain why it's useful for them, and they guide them on how to use this. So these are sort of pamphlets that we print and which we distribute. We also do wall paintings, put them up in different places so that more and more people can come to know, and through that this mobilization happens of the platform that they can use. So even though while some learning that we gained over the years, that even with volunteers we have to be careful that there are biases that can creep in based on caste lines and gender lines, and so we had to ensure that our volunteer teams are also, there is a fair bit of representativeness among our volunteers as well. That is not that we've just recruited volunteers from upper caste groups, but because in that case they would publicize the platform and they would bring more users from their own communities and own social groups. But we really wanted to be more representative. So that was some learning that we had on how to build up these volunteer teams ourselves. We've also been working with reaching women and mobilizing women was very difficult. Women are super busy. Plus, they're hard to approach, right? So it's hard for men to reach out to women. And we tried recruiting women volunteers. So they're quite busy and they're able to give less time. But even for them, it's hard to reach out to in spaces where they can meet a large number of other women. So we've been working to self-help groups over here who already have established that offline platform, and we're able to ride on that so that in these self-help group meetings, we can tell more people about the system. And so the point is that offline is important, and even within offline, we sort of need to take care that existing inequities are not perpetuated, and it's sort of careful fee management that needs to be done. Then the other part is that we quickly realized that for the platforms to be locally relevant, different areas had different needs. And earlier we had a system which was there was a one phone number for all of Jharkhand. But now we've actually, we have a more federated setup where we have set up for different districts now, a different phone number for each district. And we've seen the relevance of this because the volunteers then were able to understand who are the broad set of people on their platforms, and they were able to design programs accordingly. So it becomes it also creates a lot of ownership. And so in areas where we had a lot of farmers, the volunteers have created farmer advisory, agriculture advisory programs where farmers ask questions and the volunteers take these up to the Krishi Vigyan Kendra and get the solutions. Similarly, for career counseling in more youth-dominated clubs. So by club, I just mean a district level instance over here, which is done by a group of volunteers. Yeah. So basically, this federated setup and trying to decentralize the ownership was very important, so that people could build local programs, take that ownership. Then I was talking about volunteers and trying to get the incentives right, that why would the volunteers work with us? That also has been a big learning. So some volunteers work because they draw a lot of social value in being able to do something for their community. But some of them also work with us because being associated with GramVaani, being able to talk to the community also builds up important skills. It builds up contacts with government officials and all sorts of things, right? So there's a clear purpose. And solidarity and group work is very important, because when, let's say, we're running a campaign on quality of midday meals in schools or problems with ration shops in an area, And if the volunteers, once they work as a team, to take up these issues to the district officials and try and help resolve those, that leads to a lot of very strong solidarity. And we do have financial incentives. It's small, but getting those right, how to measure these incentives, how to have good-based incentives, all of that was also very interesting learning. And my point is that all of this learning that we got through our own work on the ground, we were then able to translate it to when partners were using our technology, right? So we were able to encourage our partners to follow similar processes of identifying key members, volunteers, for example, or other resource people from the community who could take this ownership, who could get closely involved in the in managing and steering the platform and what it was meant to be used for. So that's really, I feel, some of the main reasons. Because the technology is fine, the technology is simple, but it's actually these processes around the technology that become very important to ensure the success of a development project that actually leads to meaningful social impact. Yeah, and similarly, I mean, I can keep going on, but yeah, things like, right, so ultimately this is a social media platform, right? It's a participatory media platform where users are calling and contributing content, and we've got to get our editorial policies right. And this also comes with a strong signaling that we need to send to our users, that it's not a platform for misinformation, it's not a platform where one view can crowd out other views. So we try to ensure diversity. Right, this is just an example of a strike that happened, and we tried to get views from, the volunteers tried to get views from stakeholders across the spectrum on what kind of issues were they talking about as being important for them. So it's basically the signaling which you're able to do through the moderation that also creates a respect in the mind of the users about the platform, that it's a platform for them and it's not to be fired. Yeah. And another big step that we've always taken is that we always wanted to be more than just a media organization. So the whole idea with having volunteers on the ground who can actually take up, especially on grievances on government schemes. The volunteers pick up these issues and take them up to government officials. They follow up on these issues to make sure that they are resolved. So that also builds, partly for us, it builds a very strong credibility in the community that not only is it a responsible media organization, but it's also translating some of this information into action. Whatever issues we're raising, we're seeing some impact actually happening, some of these issues actually getting resolved. And of course, it means that we also need to work with the volunteers, mentor them, build their relationships with government officials. In many cases, the volunteers have their own relationships, but in many other cases, our teams have to actively work with them. Yeah. So the main point I wanted to get across before we get to sort of the next part of the talk on more on the technology, that essentially we sort of understood the importance of community ownership, importance of, and also communities can only own the platform and steer the platform if they have the capacity to do it. So that capacity building is crucial that we try to bring in, and giving the ability to the communities to actually say, right, what they want the platform to be used for, what they feel should be published, what should not be published. That steering is relevant. Collaboration and networking with other stakeholders is very important so that it can just amplify. And ultimately, we need replicable models, right? But not right cookie cutter replication. Right, it needs to be something that can be contextualized so that the communities can draw that ownership and steer it. Right, but ultimately that model has to be replicable. Only then it will scale. Yeah. So there's some questions I wanted to leave you with. Right. So this is a fantastic book, Small is Beautiful by E.F. Shumaker. I'm sure many of you would have heard of it. And Shumaker was talking about basically local technology that is built through local materials and which can be repaired and managed by the local community. And he was actually talking of mechanical technologies like agricultural implements, seed crushing machines, and so on. And he was basically saying that these small technologies are much better than big technologies like industrial production. Because the community can control it, they can build more relevant tools for themselves, and it also builds up their skills, as opposed to industrial automation, where there's theories that it leads to de-skilling and so on. So now the equivalent basically for us is sort of not so much that the community is building the technology. I mean, we don't belong to the community and we build this technology, but the appropriateness really comes from the community still being able to manage it, still being able to understand what it is about, and being able to manage it. And a thought basically to leave you with is that, so the platform approach sort of is the king these days, right? With Aadhaar, India Stack, Agri Stack, Health Stack, you name it, right? But there are, I'm sure all of us are aware of issues also that this creates, right? So that's something to think about, right? That what's wrong with this particular approach of pushing platforms and the way it is being practiced in terms of how it leads to disempowerment. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's sort of fundamental in terms of the learning that we've gained. And just very quickly, I'll just zap to this. So we've also been now enhancing the IVR. Earlier, it was basically just key press-based IVR. But now, like I said, users can actually speak, and then we use Google Speech API so that and dialogue flow right now, so that we can in real time push this audio, get the transcript, and then we try to do entity extraction. So and then on top of that, we've also built our own tools for entity extraction, which are actually able to perform a bit better than the entity extraction that Dialogflow provides. So we can do, I mean, this is sort of, we've not actually built this particular pipeline. We tested it on a different setup. But this is something we'd love to do, that we can ask that what governance scheme are you facing a problem with? What is your grievance? Number of people were affected? Has there been action or not action? And users can basically just interact in natural speech. And we hope that we'll be able to do something useful with it. Then another part that we've built, the animation is of, is automated question answering. That the user basically speaks a question. And if we have a pre-recorded FAQ database, right, of questions and answers that other people have asked in the past, then we have built these models that we match the question against the data set that we have, and we pull out the top answer, and then we play those. Yeah. And maybe if there is interest, I'll be happy to talk about issues that we faced with all of this. Right. So overall, I mean, we're able to get to like a 77 to 80% kind of an accuracy over here in terms of returning a good answer in the top 3 results that we give. But it's challenging. The main challenge is basically data set separation. And I'll be happy to talk more about it later. I spoke about the relevance of offline. Now, offline is very important because, that's the only thing that might work in some areas, but it's also a slow process, right? Because it means that you actually have to tell people through word of mouth, right, about this system and so on. So another thing that we have developed is, and which we've used in more government projects, where there is a large offline team who can actually something like an enumeration, so they can enroll people. So this is sort of a form that a self-help group coordinator fills out of the phone numbers of the people in their self-help group. Yeah. And then some more fields that we have, that is there somebody pregnant in your family? Do you have a child who is less than 6 months and so on, right? And then we are able to scan this form, and then we built optical character recognition models, which are able to take these single digits, right? And we have a very high accuracy, upwards of about 94% of getting the entire phone number correct. single-digit accuracy is above 99%. So this is quite useful because it means that at scale, we can actually get these phone numbers and then we can push custom messages to the people. Yeah. So this also is like can be a useful tool, right, for large scale enrollment. Let me hand it over. Aditi, if you want to take it forward, we can.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'll quickly go over the technology stack, and we'll leave some time at the end for some questions. I think there's some already there. Basically, what we've done is, Adi talked about, that there are various layers to this, where there's the network layer where the SIP lines come in, and then we have a server in our data center, which actually where the SIP lines come in, and our applications actually run on these servers itself, right? But the content that we get from the user-generated content still needs to be used at other places for people who are doing the moderation, where they use, or stuff that we include in the mobile Vani app, that still needs to be propagated back into other applications that exist. So what we've done is, for efficiency's sake, the IVR stack and the applications that run on it run in our data centers where the actual lines come in from the operators, but then we sync that data into the cloud itself from where the rest of the applications run. We also have a business intelligence server that runs on reports, etc., on the various programs that are going on, so people can have an overview of how the program or the campaign is progressing, how many people picked up the call, how many people heard the call for a certain duration, just metrics on how things are going so that they can get an overview of that. But that all is data that's synced back up to the cloud, and then the apps are sort of running from that. There's some information about the number of calls that we can run. At peak calls, we have outbound calls and inbound calls as well. Outbound calls, about 400 is the peak stuff that we can do. The incoming calls that are coming in, where we get a missed call and then call them back, are about 400, but we can go up to 1,000 calls at a given time that we can process simultaneously. Next slide, Adi. So this is, again, more the different layers that exist in the system itself. The gray one is the infrastructure layer, which runs the IVR and the database and the storage of the files itself. The analytics is built on top of that. And then the applications that run are the layers that are on top of it, right? So if you think about managing a case or doing the Q&A itself, these are all intelligence that built on the basic layer of the IVR stack itself, or the voice applications, the forms that are filled. These are all built on top of the infrastructure or the core layer itself. Everything is sort of API driven. I think we have a couple of slides which talk about the specific APIs themselves. So if there's an outbound campaign, you can trigger it by making an API request, and you'll get a response in terms of whether we accepted that, whether we were able to make that outbound call. You can query it again to see what happened with that campaign itself. And you can have schedulers attached to it saying, this is the call that I want to make to this number, and this is my scheduling properties for it, that make a call between this time and that time. And that will help us gather information about how many calls were successful. And there are certain knowledge that we have about the user themselves, what is the best time to call them, and things like that. We're sort of running out. So the rest of the slides are actually, you can skip a few of them. These are all the various APIs that we have in terms of content management and moderation, and the different states that the moderation goes through. So everything is sort of API driven, so other people can call into this itself. And we are working on the process of sort of open sourcing some of this and opening up the APIs themselves so other people to integrate into into the system itself, so that the same outbound functionality or the same survey collection stuff can be done by anybody. And we're also working on a standard format so that we can use it across different platforms. So we have an app where you can, again, have a chatbot which will ask you certain questions. That same survey can be run either on the voice interface or on the mobile app interface. There's a standard format that can be deployed across both of them. So it's sort of a standard definition language itself. I think Lobo had a question besides. For now, I think they're just internal teams that are the users of the API, but our hope is that when we open source it and we make it available to everybody, that API can be used by others as well. Similarly, there's a case management application where when the grievance addressal is, somebody makes a grievance addressal, it goes into a certain state, somebody picks it up, and then they are sort of responsible for taking it to resolution state. And then there's a validation that also happens to say, yes, this has been resolved, and we can now close the case, but the validation happens from the actual person who basically gave the initial grievance itself. So a lot of these are the apps that are built on top of the IVR platform. And then, like I mentioned previously, that there is analytics that is done on top of it. So we have an ETL pipeline that runs every day. And then that goes into a data warehouse itself, where we can actually run business analytics on it or business intelligence on top of it. But there are also reports that are generated on a daily basis, so people can get access to what is happening with each of those campaigns as they go through. I think there's just one more slide maybe. So this is the WhatsApp and the Messenger integration where I was talking about, having a standard definition language where you can say whether you're doing it on Messenger or WhatsApp, that this is a JSON that we generate for the definition of the workflow itself. And then the user enters a response. We process the response and either execute some functionality in the backend or make a call to an API to let us know what the user pressed and what that really means. And then we have the set of transitions saying the person pressed 1 or pressed 2, and that means something else. Right? This is what they selected, goes back into the JSON to see, okay, if they press 2, what is the path that I need to, or what is the branch that I need to go into? It's a very simple way of defining a workflow for whether it's WhatsApp or Messenger or the IVR-based thing. It's the same messenger the same definition that it can be used across the different flows. I think we have been exploring the open sourcing roadmap for the platform itself, so that we can open it up to other people to integrate into the platform, as well as take what we have and deploy it in other use cases that they can think of, right? The way to sort of scale this would be for people to take that application and say, this would be useful in some other area that we are working on, and then come back and contribute to the platform itself and say we would like this additional functionality in it because that can help us solve a further use case that may not be addressed right now. So the idea to open it up and have the key components out there so that other people can integrate into the system, look for improvements in the process itself. I think a lot of you have used a similar approach, so I guess this is pretty relevant. I think we're short on time, so I'll open it up to other questions, which maybe Adi and I can take up.
Adi and Abhideep, there are some questions on the chat window starting from the top. So do you all want to just first kind of address it before other people can jump in with their questions?
Adi, do you want to take the first one?
Yeah, I was just looking it up. So Logan is asking, what are some of the biggest surprises and challenges from deploying these solutions with NGOs? Yeah, so Logo basically, the point was that very often organizations and partners that we were working with, sometimes they were limited in their own capacity, internal capacity, to use the technology. So that was one reason why, for example, when it came to things like content creation, or when it came to skills mobilization, that because we had built up that expertise through our own work on the ground, we were able to provide these additional services and guidance also to the partners. So I think that was probably the main thing. Otherwise, now of course it's much better in the sense that, I mean, about 7-8 years back, it was much harder. But now everybody is reasonably tech savvy, so things are nice. They're able to take things more quickly. Yeah. So then should I go to the next one?
Yeah.
So Aman is asking, how did you arrive at the need for this overall solution in the first place? Yeah. So Aman, basically, the choice of working in the space of community media was sort of our choice. We felt that community media, social media, participatory media, this can really empower communities, improve governance. So that solution space sort of came from our side. But as we started working with so many partners, the number of use cases was just starting, because ultimately it's a community engagement system, and which therefore could be used in many different ways, right? Like, I mean, there's different examples that I shared. That was the idea. Then Arjun is asking, what was the transition like from a tech org to a media and publishing org? Was it difficult? Do you still do tech in-house, or is the org structure? Yeah, absolutely. So, so we do the tech in-house. And that was sort of the transition, that when we started GramVaani, we were basically just a team of techies. But as we went along, we built a community mobilization team, we built a content development team, a program management team. So that was really the shift in that sense. That when we started working on the ground and we started realizing that we had to build editorial policies, we had to think about journalism and journalism ethics, then so that was, I mean, we had to build up the team. And then the good thing was that whatever we were doing sort of on this side of running our own program on the ground was automatically translating into guidance, collaboration, advice with the partner. So all the learning was basically, it made all the programs that we did with our partners also just more effective, because we had that much better sense of what it means to work on the ground. Are they consumers of APIs? Abhideep answered that, yeah. So, I mean, we've had several partners also use the APIs, like for survey, pushing out surveys and stuff. But yeah, mostly, I mean, it's consumed internally on the stack itself. But yeah, the APIs are there. And so even now, at least on the hosted setup in India, I mean, we can, if any of you want to use this, it's very straightforward.